Well, Mayor.
All rise. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This meeting of the Washington County Board of Commissioners is now in session pursuant to adjournment with the Honorable Chairman Greg Matherly presiding. Come to order and remain standing.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our first order of business this evening is our prayer, which will be led by Commissioner Huffine, and the pledge that will be led by Commissioner Carey.
Let us bow our heads.
Dear Lord, again, we gather here this evening very humbly before you, asking your blessing on not only us, but the citizens of this county, of this nation, and the world, dear Lord. Dear Lord, empower us with the knowledge we need tonight and every day to do your work and to be of an honor to you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Let us address the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you'll take us to the roll call screen, please. You'll go ahead and indicate your presence here this evening.
So you're here, or almost.
Madam Clerk, we have 14 present. We do have a quorum. Next item. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add to the agenda, or do we have a motion to approve it?
Move we approve.
Motion made to approve the agenda. We have a second by Commissioner Williams.
I've got a question, Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Harris?
Just a couple of the things I would like to discuss. One is on the debt of the county. I just like to break out of that. I want to discuss line 530, which is something we put in the form of motion to change on the agenda of those things.
To add those to the agenda, we'd probably just need an amendment, amend the agenda with those two items. Is that your motion to amend? Do we have a second to amend those items to the agenda? Commissioner Edens? All right, are there any questions or discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, let's just vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Is there anything else that, open the floor for amendment? Seeing none, we'll vote on the agenda as amended. All in favor of that, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. And we have approved the agenda as amended. We have no public comment this evening. We'll go ahead and move into the review of the fiscal year 2020 financials. Mayor?
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. There's two items on here that you may want to think about as we go through this. We've got item 6, 7, and 8 will be included in a presentation in just a minute. But number 9 is a question for y'all to consider whether the county wants to consider adding additional services to what it does or potentially reducing services. That would be topic for discussion once the presentation is complete. And then also plan for the next meeting for the budget for the full commission in March. What you'd like to see at that meeting, we have teed it up with the office holders and department heads to come and present their budgets to this group. That's what you would like to see, or just provide information as what you'd like. Mitch?
You do have one correction to your minutes. I probably should have spoken up, but item 6 is actually a review of the FY21 financials, not FY22. So, thank you, clarity and whatnot.
Thank you, Mitch. I'll change that on my agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Susan, is this thing ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what we wanted to do tonight, for your information, is to actually provide you a thumbnail of how we ended FY21. I know we've talked about that a little bit, but we're going to touch on that real quick. And then where we stand today, well, actually at December 31st, 6 months through the current budget year. You have a packet on your table, which are going to be the slides that you see. And as I understand it, one of the amendments to the agenda was discuss county debt. There are some slides in here on that. Was thinking that may be of interest and importance to you. So I've dropped that in. I didn't catch, Mr. Chairman, what was the second thing that was added to the agenda?
The debt and the past due charges.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think Commissioner Harris said that line item number, I,
It's line 530.
Correct.
530.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Susan. Here we go. Okay, FY '21, what you see on the screen, and if you'll look at slide number 3, I believe, should be on your second page. I believe you all have 2 slides per page. Yes, it would be on page 2. Top slide. What you have is our budgeted fund balances as of the end of June versus our actual fund balances. So as you can see from the far right column, we had a good year. Fund balances in all funds, were in the black. The operational expenses for FY '21 are shown here, and you can see each fund's actual contribution to the increase in their fund balance. I will point out that the first line, which is the general fund, and you'll notice that we have a $19.9 million fund balance. I will point out that our fund balance reserves require us to maintain 15 million of that in reserves for our 4 months operating. There's another $2.5 million of restricted reserves, things like military surplus equipment sales, economic development funds from the IDB is roughly $1 million. And so that makes up the bulk of that. We still have, though, fortunately, some room in that number. We haven't used it all up, so that's a positive. 127, Fund 127, the Arpa Special Revenue Fund. You may be looking there and say, well, how do we have a fund balance of $190? I'll address that. The revenue in the ARPA fund is only recognized as it is spent, as projects are adopted and spent. What we have in that fund, and it's not in fund balance, and this is just an accounting deal, but what we have is right now we have $11.6 million of liability. If we don't spend it, we essentially may have to give it back. So we haven't done anything with it. So it's not we haven't recognized it as revenue, we haven't recognized it as expense, but we do have roughly $11.6 million of ARPA money non-committed at this point. It's still sitting with the trustee. So just wanted to point those couple of things out. General fund expenditures, that's where we usually spend most of our time in the budget process is, where are you putting your resources in terms of general government. You can see the various categories there. And what this schedule represents is the amounts spent versus the amounts budgeted. And so overall in the general fund, on average, there was about 6% of the budget was returned to the general fund. So you can see how each of those categories broke out. I should say, if you've got any questions as I blow through this, it's something, feel free to interrupt me. If you don't, that'd be fine.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the capital projects, the fund balance there, is there anything specifically that we're saving for in that fund? Is there some anticipated cost that's down the road?
Yeah, I didn't jot a note down on here, but if you're looking at the $7.8 million in our
Yes.
Fund 171,
Yes.
that occurred because things weren't done last year that were included in the budget that are essentially rolling forward. There weren't commitments for those capital items And so those dollars will essentially roll forward in the capital plan and are being readdressed this year or will be readdressed next year.
So they're not in progress yet, but they will be, right? Or they?
Yeah, this stuff right here, I mean, it was done. I mean, we had almost 7.9 million moved to this year. And we'll get to another schedule here in a minute, I think.
Well, no, don't let me get you off pages.
Well, no,
Let's just.
you'll get to another schedule. It's where we are now in that capital projects
Okay.
fund.
All right.
When we look at our FY20 or FY22 stuff, Mr. Chairman. But yeah, that is a good question. Why is that fund balance there? Well, it was essentially because projects were actually deferred or not committed to in fiscal 2021. Again, what this pie chart essentially just shows you is that, public safety, administration of justice, about 2/3 of our general fund budget. The yellow part and then the gray part on the bottom left. We put a bit into public health and welfare through our health department. And so you can see where in broad categories where the resources are being allocated. All right, moving into how we ended up at the end of December. And you all should have gotten your December financials. We should have gotten them, maybe a week or two ago. We finally got December closed and those numbers out the door. As you can see in the next to the last column, you can kind of see where each of our funds are actually performing in terms of current year revenue versus expense. And this is usually the case. You're going to have more, you're going to have generally a higher demand on resources, a higher spend in a lot of cases in your revenue for the first 6 months because, of course, property taxes don't start until November. And the bulk of it will come in January and February. And so, yeah, Mr. Chairman, going back to your question on capital projects, if you look there on the capital projects fund, we've actually generated, $543,000 of revenue in capital projects year to date. We don't have a lot of pennies going into that fund. So with the projects that are forthcoming, that $5.2 million of capital projects, and depending on what we do in the FY23 budget, most of that is all spoken for. I did not put a capital investment plan schedule in here, probably should have done that, but I'd refer you back to that to see, what you've actually allocated towards capital dollars in both the schools and in general government.
So, Bitch, let me ask you a question and let me follow up with this. So some of the air conditioning projects and stuff that we had talked about, that we were going to try to work through some of this ARPA money with, maybe Commissioner Wheeler, you can weigh in on that too, but is that still what we're looking at or is that included as well in this $5 million?
The capital investment plan does have Mayor, the detention center and the courthouse HVAC programs in there. Now,
Okay.
if they were funded with ARPA funds, then that would, of course, just, provide other dollars within the capital projects fund for other general government capital projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't know if they were included in that number.
Well, in terms of those dollars, if I may, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but the manner in which the budget was balanced last year was with an estimated $2 million transfer from the capital projects fund.
That's correct.
To the general fund. The transfer hasn't happened yet because it hasn't been needed. But technically, $2 million of the dollars that are sitting in the capital projects fund.
That's correct.
Are budgeted to transfer to general fund if needed.
If needed. So as long as we continue to perform it at kind of where we are, hopefully we won't need all that $2 million to balance with it at the end of the year.
That's my expectation.
Thank you.
At this point.
And just to, if it's okay,
Yes,
if
Commissioner
okay,
Jones?
just check my understanding of where we're going here. So if we didn't, need to move it out of, did you say out of capital and into general? Right,
Yes.
yes.
That's what we had committed to in last year's.
Correct.
If we didn't have to do that, as we're hoping, then would we still need ARPA funds to cover those projects? Or would they be projects that we have planned to cover through capital?
Yeah, it depends on, what, and I haven't been privy, what the ARPA's planning to do and versus what, we have certain projects within our capital investment plan that are in there and they're fundable, okay? And like I said, I didn't bring that plan with me. I probably should have. I didn't really anticipate digging down into capital so much, but, as the mayor said, what other things may be coming forward. I want to say we've got the election commission in there, and do we move it forward? Do we move it back, the new facility? So, it's all, kind of fluid at this point. I don't know that I answered your question, but, it just depends on what the total pie looks like, Commissioner.
Commissioner Huffine?
Just a request to your point, as we move forward in this budget process, let's detail that out real clear so that we understand where we're going to use ARPA, how much we used, how much, and how that relationship between current capitals and ARPA.
Right.
So we're making good decisions.
Okay, I agree.
Commissioner Wheeler?
The one thing I would say is that you've got to make the capital projects decision before you take that, you declare that you've got extra ARPA money. Because there are some projects that you better make sure we got covered before we open up that block of the ARPA money. But it's potentially there if we end up where we cover everything else. But we got some serious discussion as a commission to do about the capital plans before we can do that.
Is there time limit on ARPA funds spending?
Yes,
That's what I saw.
December 2026. Committed December 24, spent by December 2026. Anybody else?
One more question, Mitch.
Yeah.
I know this hasn't been talked about, and I know it's been on the radar for some time as far as the air conditioning and HVAC over at the courthouse. I know.
The historic courthouse.
The historic
Oh,
courthouse.
it gets talked about all the time, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know it does, and it just seems it don't get talked about in the budget much, but, that's coming, we're gonna have to address that. None of that is currently in these numbers that we're looking at today, right?
Yeah, I think we had that. None of it has been committed in here.
Okay.
And forgive me, like I said, I don't have the capital investment plan in front of me. We had that though in FY '22, did we not? I believe we did.
I think
you
we
all
did.
just haven't authorized the dollars to do that yet.
Okay, all right. All right. That may be something good to discuss at our next meeting is the capital investment plan too. And that might be something to add to our next agenda.
Okay.
On this when we do it again.
That's probably easier than some of the other stuff.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, and this is where those, showed you this slide earlier, for, FY '21, but this is, our general fund, general categories and where we are in terms of budget used during the year. And, as you would expect, we're 50%, 50% of our budget's been used, which, FYI, right at 57% of our combined solid waste, highway, and general fund budgets, 57% of that is salaries and benefits. Just for so obviously the biggest piece of our budget is our payroll and personnel cost. Let's see. Yeah, 57% on the general fund. Okay, want to just briefly touch on where we are property-wise, property assessment. That is our primary revenue source. And What, do we have any questions about these, the first 6 months of the year's financials that, that general? And if you do have any specific questions, related to the financials that we sent out, as always, please feel free to call and we'll walk you through the details. We do, I was telling, Mayor, and we may have mentioned this last time, but, we looked at, really the volume of transactions that we process and from a payable standpoint, we're doing, I've got two ladies that are doing 1,000 invoices a month. So, there's a lot of detail that rolls through these numbers. So if you ask me a question and it's really specific, I may not have the answer because I may need to go find one of those 12,000 invoices. But, that just FYI. What you have here in front of you is a graph. The bars represent the assessed values. The blue line represents the tax rate. The tax rate scale is on the right and the assessed value is on the left. And you can see there in 2014, 15, 2015, 16, that's when our tax rate was at it would have been 2016, 17. Tax rate for that 2016 property tax year would have been $1.97. Of course, that's the year that we added pennies to the tax rate and moved it to $2.38, which is that top blue line. And then, of course, 3 years ago, I believe it was, you all reduced, in conjunction with reappraisal, the tax rate to $2.15. But just wanted you to have an idea of how that was tracking. These are the numbers that I'm utilizing right now to estimate, what a penny is going to bring us this next year. And so using the assessors, this is some data from mid-January. And of course, that number really does change about every day. And as we get closer to budget time, we'll tighten that up. But, almost $3.5 billion of assessed value. And of course, we receive $2.15 for every $100 of assessed value in terms of property tax, times our collection percentage. But doing a quick calculation or an estimate of where our property tax would be in 2023, you can see here, we're comparing 2022, which is what we used for our budget, using a 95% collection rate. Last year, a penny was budgeted at $330,937. If those assessment numbers held true, by the time we adopted our budget in June, a penny would bring us $334,897. I do expect that penny value to go up. And that happens for a variety of reasons, but primarily when you take a 40-acre farm and turn that into, 200 building lots, you bump up. And I know that the assessor's office is working really hard right now on subdividing and getting that information into their assessment software. Of course, it usually takes a year and a half or so before that actually translates into property tax dollars, but it's moving. And as you can see, our assessed values, from last year, which was actually our numbers that we had in October of 21 to January 14, we've increased the assessed value by 1.4%, which is much better than a couple of years ago when it moved 0.5%. So we're trending in the right direction. Okay. Anybody have any questions on property tax?
Can you go back to one
Sure.
that side? That 95% collection rate, that's what we've been budgeting, right?
That's what we've been using for
But I
budgeting.
remember last year it was a whole lot better than that, like 97 or something.
The actual yes. Trustee Story and I were looking at some numbers earlier today, and if you go back 10 years, and you can look in the back of your annual comprehensive financial report, there's a statistical schedule in there that shows the collection in the year of levy. And that's what we're looking at here. You know, how much are we collecting in the year that we levy the numbers? You know, you know, 10 years ago, it was like 94%. Okay, but now we are at 97, and I think Trustee Story is really pulling for and hoping that he ends up at 98%, you know, come June 30. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Jones?
Thank you. Can you just make it plain for me? I think you said this, but I just want to make sure I get it, that the increase we're seeing is due to development? I heard the example of the 200-acre farm and it just stuck in my head. So is that what you're saying?
That's my understanding of it. To dive deeper into it, you probably need Mr. Buckingham to you know, flesh it on out. It's not because of inflation. You know, that doesn't drive our assessed values. So new buildings, new apartment complexes, new houses, which takes a lot of houses. Don't know that there's a lot of commercial construction going on outside of the apartment area, but he would be the one that would really have to address that question in greater detail.
Chairman.
Commissioner, what?
I just rounded out 331 for a penny the current fiscal year and 335 for next year. But that is a 1.2% increase.
That's correct.
And so despite the significant development that's going on in Washington County, and there is a time delay, but the revenues the point I wanted to make is that the revenues to the general fund are growing about 1.2% per year.
That's correct. And the expenses are more.
How much?
Well, if you look at inflation factors of 7%, a lot more than that. So, you know, yeah, and that's been the case for years, and you know, we managed through it. But yeah, we're structurally right.
The point being, I think it's easy for us to look at these numbers and go, "Oh wow, a penny. The value of the penny as a tax is $331,000 now, and gee, it looks like it's going to $335." But my point is, yeah, that's growth and that's a good thing, but it's only 1.2% growth when expenses are increasing significantly more than that.
And if you'll go to the little chart below, if you look at the general fund, the last column is how much that growth will give you. $265,000 of additional revenue in the general fund.
Yeah, when you put it in those terms, that's not much money.
Correct.
Well, not with the 2% raise on those 500,000.
Right.
To follow up on what Commissioner Malone said, you've got a lot of vacancies, and we're having a hard time finding people to come to work for us. So I think you're going to have some wage inflation to deal with this year, probably next year.
Right.
And it looks like it will be a significant number.
Right. I suspect you may get to hear some of that next month from some of your elected officials.
But it is during the budget process that a certain level of frustration in myself builds, because I'm not sure that there's a full appreciation of the fact our general fund revenues are growing about 1.2% and our expenses are growing far more than that.
No argument. Let's talk about debt for a minute, unless anybody's got any more questions on tax revenue. Okay, we do an annual debt report, and so this is your annual debt report that we're submitting to the commission. This debt report is as of June 30, 2021, and as you can see there, it lists our annual debt service is the first line, the amount of debt that is outstanding. We do exclude the aerospace park from an accounting treatment. You know, on a government-wide basis, the auditors do treat that as debt, but with our prepayment of it, it's, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000, maybe $300,000 at this point. I exclude that from this because we really don't make debt service payments on that per se. So you can see what our total debt is at the end of June 30. That's $143 million. You know, that's what we're going to be stroking checks for over, from now until 2037, plus the interest on that principal. The debt management policy set forth some ratios that we're targeting and that we're called to meet. And if you'll look there, the first one is our debt per capita. That was set by commission years ago at they wanted the threshold to be less than $1,790 per person. Their target at the time they set the policy was to make it $1,000 a person. If you jump into the middle column, you'll see the first row that's highlighted in green, you'll see that at the end of June 30, 2021, it was $1,078 per person. At the end of FY22, given what we have in process now and what will be on the books and our debt service payments, we project that number to be $998 per person. Now, we got some help through the census. When we jumped to 133,001, and you can see down about halfway down the middle of the page, you can see what the population numbers were that we looked at. I will point out that on the comptroller's website, and I didn't bring it, but on the comptroller's website, there's a transparency and accountability in government section, and you can actually compare debt per capita by county compared to other counties. I will point out that when you look at that, note that the comptroller uses, for example, if you looked at 2019, the comptroller would be using the 2010 census numbers. On here, we roll it up based on the American Community Survey each year to actually get an estimate of what our true population or what our population is as best as we can determine. Debt per capita is a percentage of income per capita. We've never set any thresholds for that because, quite frankly, getting the annual income per capita has always proved to be challenging from different sources. So there's not a real strong, solid, reliable, reoccurring number that we can use for there. But we take and calculate it anyway. And you can see that it has been declining. So debt as a percentage of income per capita could mean either your debt's going down or your income per capita is going up or both. Debt to appraised value of taxable property. Now that's not assessed property, that's taxable property. Is targeted to be below 2.2 with or below the threshold of 2.2 with a target of 1.2. We're actually below that target now at 1.1%. Debt service to operating expenditures. This is, what our principal and interest payments are each year divided by our general fund, solid waste, and highway operating cost. And those numbers you can see with the target of 10%, you can see that we're trending, and with a high end of 14%, you can see that we're trending upward a bit, which means either our operating expenses are going down or our debt payments are going up, which really both are really a good thing. Maybe our target, maybe we had that backward when this was adopted. Maybe the target needed to be, 14 and the threshold 10, because we're improving our debt service as it relates to our operating expenses. The percent of debt to be retired in the next 10 years, that's usually a pretty important thing. And the comptroller doesn't allow balloon debt anymore. Balloon debt is, of course, where you pay very little principal or no principal for several years, then you pay a chunk at the end. Comptroller frowns on that. So having numbers that are really skewed in this 10-year horizon you'd really had to done something that the comptroller probably wouldn't have let you do to have that. But you can see that our debt to be retired over the next 10 years is growing. Our percent is growing. We've gone from 53% to now we'll have 60% of our debt retired in the next 10 years. So that's kind of where we stand debt-wise. Here's a graphical look at, really how our debt principal will play out over the next, where are we, 17 years into 2037. I will point out that in 2024, we will probably take title to the Jonesboro Elementary School, which has a lease payment associated with it. But under the accounting rules, it will be treated as debt. And once that occurs, then we will see, right now we're at $52 million on the project. You'll see a bump up in that year of some amount up to 52 million. It could be less because we don't know what we're going to spend. We don't know. And so anyway, yes, sir.
One other factor we need to take into account is that growth is great, and we gotta pay for it, and it takes a while for the revenue to catch up with roads, water, sewer, red lights. So, there's a lag time where we're paying for all this growth and the revenue hasn't caught up with us yet. So that's something else you're gonna need to factor in.
Right. That is polish the crystal ball, but yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I'm glad you mentioned the Jonesboro School project, because like you say, that's gonna be about $55 million, and, which we're obligated to now. Even though the school is not finished, we're obligated this next commission.
Well, we have a commitment is the word I would use.
We could back out of it right now.
You'd have to ask the county attorney that question.
I don't think we could, and I wouldn't look to do it, I supported that project, and I'm proud to support that project. I think we had a lot of people in this commission who really worked hard for it, so. All these questions here is nothing to go back and say that I felt like my vote there was not right, because I think it was. But, when we talk about that, and especially looking at next year, we're gonna have 7 new commissioners to serve these 8 fine commissioners that's gonna stay on. And, I think we need to be totally transparent with this group that's coming in. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first came in, it was hard to get information. It was hard to get facts and numbers, and some like at times I was having to pull teeth to get it, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yes. And I hope that we are. And, there's been statements saying that our debt obligation right now is $132 million. And that's just not true, because, this commission voted for this school. It's got to be paid for. We voted for this $12.5 million to give to Jonesboro, or to Johnson City. We keep back out of that now. And I would just encourage you and the mayor both to be honest with these numbers. Don't throw out numbers of 132 million, knowing that it's a lot closer to about 180, $90 million that our debt obligation is. Could you argue with me the point that that's not our real debt obligation?
Yes, sir, I could. I could say that is not debt today. We have to have all our debt approved by the comptroller of the currency.
So
that's not debt.
So
today, that is not debt.
I said debt obligation.
It's not a debt obligation. If you want to use a legal term, it is not a debt obligation. It's a commitment. It's a lease commitment.
Well, who would pay for the school then if it's not a debt obligation?
When we take title to it, it would become one. That's why I indicated that.
Making a payment then.
The comptroller did an audit at June 30, 21, and they said that our debt was $143,000. The school was underway at June 21. So therefore, I would submit to you, it is not debt today. It is a commitment. That's why I brought it up, because in 2 years, you're going to see 52, 53, 54 million more dollars on debt. So, maybe it's semantics, Commissioner Harris, that we're just dealing with, but.
It's some words, but I would just say this, I would encourage you. I think the commissioners coming in need to know the whole picture. You go here and build a house, if I go to Freddie's bank and borrow money, I may not start making the payment right then. But once I sign that note, that might be, when the house is done, I start paying it. It's a debt obligation. Somebody's got to pay for it.
Commissioner Carrier?
I was gonna say, in Mitch's defense, having worked with financial statements all my life, you're kind of limited by the accountants and the other people that put all these audited financial statements together. And I think what he's trying to do is to make sure we don't get all confused, because if you look at our financial statements, that's gonna show what he's done. But I see where you're coming from. These are obligations into the future, and, you know, we need to be aware of that. It's part of it, but in his defense, I think you get all confused if you started, calling things debt when the CPAs don't classify it, so.
But I just think that we should be honest with people and let them know that we're committed to this school project.
Well, and
It's gonna be built, and
yeah.
we're gonna have to pay for it.
I agree with you that, and I don't think it's a question of honesty or dishonesty, it's a question that if you wanna be consistent, you gotta follow what the CPAs, or how they define it.
And that commitment is footnoted in the financial statements, so, I mean.
Actually, Mitch, I had a real good talk with the comptroller today about this. I was glad you mentioned that Gatsby thing. I sent you some messages, but I never got an answer back, you know, what was that? He was telling me that changed last year.
Gatsby 87 is what's gonna require this to be recorded.
Any lease is
Right.
that.
Before, it would have just been a lease payment. Correct.
Also, on this little form you gave us here, we were going over this, that we've got a capital lease now around what, $500,000?
That's correct.
Yeah, are you including that in this number that you gave us for this debt?
Yes, sir.
So it's included in that 143 million?
I'm pretty sure that it is. The capital lease was like $300,000 or $400,000 at the end of the year, Commissioner.
Some of these numbers here, the numbers you sent me one day don't really match up with some of these other numbers.
Will you come to my office and we'll go through them and we'll match them up anytime you want to? All right, I'll see you up there.
If it's a commitment, it's an obligation.
I'll let you.
If I may,
manage.
just because I think Mr. Carrier is right, both parties are correct, but our lease commitment with the town of Jonesboro is contingent upon the performance of both parties. So Jonesboro has obligations as well to build a school and have it ready to occupy. Our obligation to make payments on the lease will never actually, at least not for a long time, we won't actually take title to the property, but our obligation to make lease payments is contingent upon performance of Jonesboro in providing a school. So technically, our obligations to make those lease payments don't commence until the school's ready to occupy.
Correct.
We're still committed to it. And I'm not arguing either point. You're both correct. But there are performance obligations required that have to be met before it becomes a true debt obligation for the county.
When is that time, Mitch?
I believe it's, Mayor, Commissioner Wheeler, you may, Jonesboro's project, I'm not involved in that project, so I couldn't tell you what their occupancy date is. I was assuming it was August of 2024.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
So that's when we would be taking title to the building then?
Well, no, sir. That's when we would begin leasing it. Title would still be held in the name of Jonesboro.
All the way until the end of that term?
Until we execute, right, until it's paid off or until we apparently buy out the lease. But, Commissioner Wheeler or our county attorney could probably speak more to the details.
Could you refresh my memory of how long that lease term was?
No, sir, I can't. I don't know what the current term is on it right now. I'd have to go back and look.
Commissioner Wheeler, do you remember that offhand? The term of the lease, how long the term of the lease was?
We talked about some terms. I'd have to look at the document.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And it just, you get to thinking about these things and trying to reflect back. Commissioner Wheeler?
I do have a question. What triggers the lease becoming categorized as debt by the comptroller?
By the comptroller, I'll answer that by saying under Gatsby 87, it would be when we enter into the facility and we begin the lease payments.
So it's when the lease payment, so this, I'm not talking about the Jonesboro School necessarily, but on any, when you sign the lease, that's not it. It's when you take possession of the
When you
item
have-
or start payments.
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Yeah. And I believe that's
And I
correct.
will say, while I have the floor, that we are absolutely committed and obligated, and we will be making these payments, I assure you.
Can I say something, one more thing? That was my biggest thing. You know, I knew when we approved this, we were approving that debt and the payment. And then when you see these numbers saying we're only 132 million debt, I'm like, well, where's this at? So I understand what Mitch is saying, we're committed to the debt. We've got to pay it, but it don't show up until we actually move into the building, even though the debt's there.
But we're still obligated.
We're still obligated.
Commissioner Carrier?
I'll make an observation to you, something. An old lawyer told me at university years ago, we were in arguing, point of law with him. He finally said, boys, it don't have to make sense, it's the law. I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's reassuring. Commissioner Huffine?
So, Mitch, let me ask you if this is sort of a fair statement and really transparency for moving forward. So in the last 2 years, from 20 to 22, it looks like ballpark, 18 million, right? 9 million a year.
Yeah, that's about right.
We know we've got a $54 million debt coming. All right, so if we need to be focused to make sure that we're doing $9 million a year in reduction, so that 6 years from now, we're at the same level. In other words, if we maintain course on that, in 6 years, we would pay down enough to assume the new debt and stay level where we are right now. I say that from the perspective, let's just be really cognizant moving forward. We need to focus on reducing debt because we're going to require more.
Yeah, but let me clarify that, because I think you're thinking as you pay down debt, your cash outflow's dropping. And if that's not the case. If you can see on this graph, okay.
It's just debt.
We're reducing principal and interest, but we've got, as we pay off debt and as we reduce interest, our cash flow stays the same, what we're committing to debt service. And then in 2037, it's a cliff. Now,
Just strictly talking debt service.
right.
Yeah. No cash flow.
But still, when we're
Commissioner-
committed, we're obligated.
We need to wait.
Commissioner Tester?
I was gonna say, and that payment won't show up as debt service.
Yeah, under,
Capital projects, right?
it will be in capital projects. It won't be in debt service unless we change where it's funding. What's happening on all these leases under GASB is that what was previously considered a rental payment gets split into principal and interest. Okay, so we will be, and it will be reported in the government-wide financials. Okay, it will be reported as principal and interest. But I mean, the dollar amount's the same, whether you're paying $2 million of rent or $2 million that's combined principal and interest. The dollars are the same. It's just how it's being reported.
Yeah, you were talking about the debt service payments being level. And I was
Well,
thinking,
they will go up in 20, when we start paying on the lease, because that will be considered, assuming you've got a $2 million a year payment, okay? Your debt service will increase $2 million.
that's what I was getting.
Yes.
Whether that would bump that number up or whether it would just be capital projects.
That's right. Yeah, it will be part of this because, it's got to be reported. So.
Mitch, just to tell you, the county attorney refreshed my memory, and that lease was not to exceed 38 years.
That's right.
So, just thank you. That was the number of years. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions on or discussion that y'all want to spend on debt? Okay. I just want to bring this to your attention because this is the time of the year that we have all of our agencies and others, looking for special appropriations. Wanted to get that in your hands, and of course is in your packet. This in our current year, we you all appropriated $1,076,000 to our fire department partners. You appropriated just a little over $3 million to our emergency medical services, 911, and animal control, and then another $720,000 to the remaining agencies that you see on the slide, for a grand total of $4.8 million, which was about 11% of our general fund budget. And with that, if there are no more questions, I'm going to let y'all talk about your budget priorities.
All right.
Thank y'all.
We appreciate that, Mitch. It was a very good presentation, and we appreciate those numbers. And it's always good to know where you are here in the middle of the year and where we're headed. And thank you very much, and we appreciate the presentation. It's a great job. All right, we did cover several items there. We did talk about 6, 7, and 8. Our item 9 was discussion of county services, programs, and operations with consideration of changes in the 2023 budget, additions and deletions. I'll go ahead and open up the floor for discussion about, I'm sure our budget committee members here would like to hear some of us weigh in on our priorities.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, Commissioner Carrigan.
I would encourage all of our commission members to go down and visit the jail. I went down about a week and a half ago, and I tell you what, I haven't seen floors that clean since I was at our training command headquarters in Randolph Air Force Base. I mean, those things look like you could eat off of them. I was very, very impressed with the improvements our sheriff has made. And I would encourage all of you to go down and just call up, go down and just take a walk-through tour. I think you'll be impressed at how it's cleaned up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. And you were right. It's quite an amazing job that's been done there. Commissioner Lott?
I just called and said, talked to the sheriff, said I'd like to come down and view. I don't know, Commissioner.
According on your actions, they may give you a ride down there.
Yeah, you can go tonight, Commissioner. Sheriff, how do you get a tour of this jail facility? Come on up here, Sheriff. Come on up here. We got to know this. I mean, Commissioner Lott's ready to go tonight.
When this is over, just come on over. No, it's an open invitation. Just give us a call and we'll set it up. We've been working hard to take care of it. What's that? We might even give you a peanut butter Big Mac.
Oh.
We've got them over there. But no, I do extend an open invitation. We've been working hard to take care of what the citizens have given us. And we're trying to be good stewards of what we have. And we're pretty proud of the progress we've made. So anytime, give us a call. That goes to everyone. Thank you.
Commissioner, you're not getting away that quick, Sheriff. Hold on now.
Okay.
Commissioner Lott?
Okay.
What's been the most difficult thing dealing right there with the big job?
I think one of the most difficult things was being almost 30 people short in the jail. I really think if we had lost a couple more people, we wouldn't be able to function. So we've turned that around, and as of yesterday, we had every position in the jail filled. I think today we went down 2. So we're in a tremendously better situation than we were.
That's great.
We've hired around 28 to 30 people. We have some people waiting in the wings. When I first came in when I was first appointed, the first jail roll call I went to, those 4 detention officers, they looked like war veterans. They were worked to death. They did. They looked like they were just wore out. And within 3 weeks, they were having to work 4 to 5 days of their 7-day break, which when you work a 12-hour shift, you need that 7-day break. We had that down to about 2 to 3 days. So We're really working, because really everything we want to do hinges on keeping that detention center filled, so that we can pull some people, give them some career paths to come out to do law enforcement on patrol like a lot of them want to do. And we're working on hiring some more certified officers.
Fine.
Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
I hope you didn't mind that question.
Absolutely not.
Steve, pick up an application when you're over there.
Yes.
I'm just gonna go up.
Hey,
Commissioner Huffine, you had a question?
Yeah, just, for someone that has an 87-year-old mother that lives alone, fortunately for her, has her wish. Wanted to thank for the welfare checks. That kind of surprised. She called me, guess who called me today? And she's telling me that every time I talk to her. It really provides a sense of security that she's not had before, and I'm sure that's for all the residents that are on that program. So thank you very much for that person.
that program has been a big hit. I think we're approaching around 50 people we call daily. It's a big hit with the people we call, and it's a big hit with the employees that call them. But they fight over who gets to call them now. They know them by names. We've had one employee who even went and checked on one of them after work. And just recently, we had a situation where the way that the system works, we'll call 3 times, try to space it out. Some of them you call and they don't like getting up early. So they'll be like, don't call me so early. But please call back. Called 3 times, no answer. And about that time, the lady's son called. He couldn't get a hold of her. So the officer that was working it, they lived in Jonesboro city limits. We sent a Jonesboro city officer out, Jeff White, great officer, and found her lying on the floor. She'd been there for 3 hours. She had a heart condition. So I think that's like our first save with that. So, but it's a great program. We're going to make it grow. Thank you. And if you know anybody that could benefit from that, let us know.
They haven't called me.
Well, I'll put you on the list. All right.
He wants to be called real early. Real early. Real early.
5:30? 5?
3 checks, call me 3 times.
Bring a biscuit if we can.
They said they could make room for you at the jail and just check on your person.
Okay. Have somebody to talk to.
Sheriff, we appreciate you a lot,
Yes, sir.
and it's good to hear from you, and I'm sure our budget time coming up, you'll want to come back and talk about that.
I'm sure
But tonight, we appreciate, want to tell you, Lieutenant Foster, for, we had a trial here till about 5 o'clock and 4:30, and him and the maintenance staff quickly turned this room into a commission chamber, and man, thank you so much for getting that set up.
No credit to
do.
me. We have excellent employees at the sheriff's office. They're hard workers, and when you turn them loose, they get things done.
We just had to brag on him a minute because we do like him.
He's a great supervisor.
We do. Commissioner Mullen?
Well, since we had an opportunity, I just wanted to offer thanks as well. I got to hear our sheriff speak yesterday, and one of the things I was glad to hear is that you had reinstated a chaplain program at the jail, and I did not realize that had gone away. So I was thankful to hear that it's been reinstated. So
We have it in progress. They have to go through a 4-hour training class, but that's very important to me. And we had I think it's been about 3 weeks now. I had the first church service, and I had, I think, 17 inmates attend. So it's very important. We can't have a Bible in school now, but if you go to prison, they'll issue you a Bible. Something's wrong there. So.
Perhaps they gave them the school, but might not be in prison.
Good point. I agree.
Sheriff, we appreciate you and,
Yes, sir.
and wish you all the best.
But I do, anytime, let us know.
Okay, we will.
Thank you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. You're welcome.
All right, well, I know we still have an agenda to go. We were discussing, additions and deletions. One thing that the sheriff did put on my mind while he was talking about that was, Big Mac peanut butter sandwich of some sort. But, going back to some capital projects, I guess I'm going to start off the discussion a little bit here too. I guess at our next meeting, I would like to discuss that capital projects plan for the general fund, kind of see what those items are that we still need to complete for this year and things that I would like to see that we're doing next. Especially the courthouse cooling and heating would be one of my things. I'd like to see where that project is, I guess. And I know that's been meaningful to several mayors attempting to get that done, but I think Mayor Grandy's brought that project quite a ways along. Anything else? Is there any directives we'd like to give our budget committee? I know they're willing to listen and hear some ideas that you might have about the budget. All right. Our next item is the consider resolution 220201 is a resolution scheduling meetings for the discussion and possible action of the FY 22-23 further to Washington County Board of County Commissioners Rules of Procedure number 1. So on that resolution, it is attached. I'm getting some feedback here somewhere.
It's feedback.
Yeah. That's Commissioner Davenport's mic's on, it's recording. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. All right, resolution 2202, it's before you, and it has some second meeting dates, third meeting dates. If you would, I guess it would be good if we gave Mitch some kind of, and the mayor, some things that they would like to bring back and review on these days. Commissioner Wheeler, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the budget committee would like you all to hear the presentation from the department. One of the things that we've talked about the last several years is to get down to the end and everybody's talking about, we need to cut this, cut that. And you've heard the whiteboard number that Mr. Malone has now will be that 1% number. If anybody's over that, we have to figure out where that comes from something else. So it would be helpful if you all heard those. I would suggest that you hear that. I don't know if there's anything else that we've talked about that they need to hear as well. Definitely those departments.
Commissioner Jones?
So are you suggesting that at our second meeting, we have those presentations, or like one of these 2 extra meetings we're doing?
So the budgets are out to the office holders and department heads now. They'll be back in March 1st. So by the end of March, we'll have that collated, ready to present. It's helpful to get that knocked out if changes need to be made, and that's the first place to.
Would March 24th be too soon?
No, that's actually what we were, somewhere in the last week or so of March would give us and the officials, time to be prepared to make the presentation.
Okay.
And can we effectively get all those presentations in one meeting?
Takes a while, it's about 50 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You just need to.
Is it wise to schedule 2 meetings just from?
Budget committee has done that, but we meet during the day and people have other commitments, so it just depends on whether this group wants to come more than once to do it. We pretty much, probably a good idea putting them back to back, but, or close together at least. That's y'all's choice. It would be one long meeting for sure.
Yeah, I would sort of defer to the budget committee themselves, since you all have sat through that. You probably have more insight on what's really truly effective for us to be able to absorb what we need to absorb.
Just depends on how much your family can last.
Yeah.
Realistically, we generally spend
5 hours.
2 to 2.5 for each one, so we're looking at least 4 to 5 hours.
What is the expectation of the budget committee? at the conclusion of these hearings?
We think that you all need to hear the same things we hear before you start talking about you haven't cut enough. Because when you hear the department head talk about, you know, we got this problem hiring people, we need salaries, it doesn't do much good for us to hear that and propose to go along with their increase if you all haven't heard that. Because we can't convey the same thing they can convey about their needs. So we felt like it was really important, especially in a tight budget year, for everybody to hear those presentations.
But if the commission was wanting to outline these certain things that they, in these proposals that they felt like was priority needs, I'm sure the budget committee would want to hear that as well, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so it could be a good recommendation or a maybe not so favorable recommendation, you know, I'm just saying.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it would be open for discussion once it hit the commission floor.
Well, yeah, the criticism is easy when you haven't heard the presentation, so I think that was important.
Right.
Commissioner Wheeler was making.
And likewise though, if somebody that may cause one of you to champion, you know, a certain increase that we need to do.
Absolutely.
And that's no problem with that, that's fine too.
And you could possibly take a vote since you could do action right there to ensure that amount was the budget, right?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. You used to be Commissioner.
I just want, and I probably should have had it with your packet, but didn't think about it when we started this discussion. But you will remember that we are operating under a state statute that has a budget calendar. This commission can change that budget calendar at any time, but on April the 1st, the budget committee must approve or reject the submitted budgets, and this is talking about everybody at the schools. If rejected, the department shall submit a revised budget within 10 days, okay? So, then May 1st is when you will receive the school's budget, and then you have until June 1st to approve or reject their budget. So that is up until our publication date, which is June the 10th. That is the timeline that we are working under unless, the budget committee and the commission choose to change it.
Commissioner Jones?
Can you tell me the school budget timeline again? What was that date?
The schools are, they submit their budget on May 1st.
And you have 10 days.
And then on June 1st, the budget committee either approves or rejects the BOE budgets. And if rejected, the schools have 10 days to bring it back.
Could you just send that timeline out to us, Mitch?
I will,
After, thank you.
glad to do that. I'll email it to y'all tonight. Thank you.
I just would support us having a meeting after the school budget has been submitted so that we can support the budget committee's consideration of that budget. But if we would want to do one of our 3 meetings in May sometime so that we can help the budget committee consider what the schools have submitted. Otherwise, I would be completely fine with, personally, doing like a Wednesday and a Thursday, like March 23rd, March 24th, like we're doing basically this week, and breaking all of those presentations into 2 nights. These departments work hard on coming up with a budget. There's nothing worse than being the last presenter at like 11 o'clock at night when we're all like bleary-eyed. So give them, a fair assessment and our best energy, whatever that is at 6 o'clock at the end of the day. That'd be my preference, but I'll do whatever the will of the group is.
If I might tag on to that, there's nothing, most of you all do have regular day jobs, as do the folks that will be presenting. But, there's nothing that's sacrosanct about 6 o'clock. So, if you want to commence a little earlier.
Is there anything, any reason why we can't do it at Amigos?
I'm in.
Just wondering,
I'm in.
Or at least DoorDash.
Right.
And you said March 23rd and 24th?
Yeah, are those Wednesday and Thursday?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, we could do the 30th and 31st too. Either is fine. I just was giving 2 dates.
Well, the only problem with that is budget does have to meet after that and before April 1st
Oh,
to say, and that can be as easy as
Right.
you say, everybody needs to go back and see if you can trim, 2.5%.
I think we need
whatever.
to do the 23rd, 24th.
Then we're back to, it's not a hard thing to push that time frame off a little bit. But we do have to do it before April 1st.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do it on the 23rd and 24th.
Second.
Would you like to talk about the time?
6 p.m.
Like the earlier.
I mean, I think we have a few folks, like Commissioner Davenport and maybe some others, not to call you out, but.
Thank you. I've already done that, Commissioner Jones, so that'll,
5:30, I
yeah.
was thinking 5:30.
I can do 5, I can do 2:30.
If you could do earlier,
Yeah,
I
I
can,
can do early.
look, I don't wanna make a commitment.
I'm at work at 6:30, so
Okay,
AM.
I could do, I'll have to move things around, but I'll do whatever the group wants. 5:30, 5, is 5, we do 5.
so 5:30,
5 is fine.
5, okay.
Moving it
Any
back.
conflict of court proceedings?
Oh, what about the room?
We would just have to get, as long as we can let them know ahead of time, is that correct, Lieutenant? We could probably work that out with the court. They just need a good notice.
Sit next to me, trying to keep me on track.
All right, so 5 o'clock on the 23rd and 24th.
Four.
So Commissioner Jones's motion was that. Who was the second? Carriger, did you do the second?
Yes, I did.
Motion. All right. Any further discussion or questions on the 23rd and 24th of March at 5 p.m.?
Is that 5 p.m. or 30?
5.
5.
5 p.m., yes, sir. All right, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Also on here, we have the April meeting. What will we be discussing in April?
That was an either or, March or April.
Oh, May, we have a May meeting. Commissioner Wheeler, when would be a good time, you think, in May? Let you do some crystal ball work.
Taking into account what Commissioner Jones was saying about the schools.
Yeah, well, we'll have the school budget, May 1st. And June 1st, they have to either keep it or send it back. So,
If the last 3 years are any indication, well, I take that back, last year we did it. Started to. You may want the budget committee to have the first pass to see if it needs to be sent back. We did not have to do this last year, I need to say that, but 2 years before that, it was sent back immediately to say we're not gonna have any new money this year. And they just came to us with one last year to their credit, and they knew that was coming, so.
Budget, we'll have a regularly scheduled meeting on May 11th. We could do the 12th or I guess the 18th and 19th.
I would prefer the 12th, I think that'd be wiser for us.
Is that when the schools will be presenting their budget to the commission? When will that be?
I think that depends on when the commission asks the schools to.
I mean, are we looking at that in March?
The budget calendar calls for them to submit it to the budget committee by May 1st. And then whatever the commission.
You have 10 days to, at that point, didn't you say that earlier?
From June 1st. The budget committee has the month of May to consider the school budget. On June 1st, the statute says that you either accept it or send it back to them. And then they have 10 days to return a new budget.
I knew I heard 10 days.
So will they be presenting that budget as well to the commission like the rest of the officials?
I would
I would assume so.
Is that what you want to hear?
I mean, it's up to the commission.
I would think from a consistency standpoint.
You brought up.
I know.
Yes,
I
from
know
a
I did.
consistency standpoint.
Yeah, from a consistency standpoint, it makes sense. Yeah.
The other thing probably on that agenda would be to discuss any budget actions that have taken place since the last commission,
Yeah.
since the May 23rd, 24th meetings.
Absolutely.
So if there are comments and things the commission expresses some interest in that night, when we work into the budget or work out of the budget, then it can be discussed further.
So you have a scheduled meeting the day before. And so will you be hearing a presentation from the school at that meeting and then having to hear it again the next day when the full commission meets? Like, I don't wanna make you double work for you.
That would be correct.
That's what doesn't make a lot of sense.
Now, really, it made more sense for probably the budget committee to provide input to the schools, give them some time.
And
And
then
then the
it's
full commission
case.
give kind of final version.
So maybe we need another week.
At least, I'd give it 10 days.
That's fair. So we would go with the 18th or whatever that was. 19th.
May or June?
May.
Since it's just this one item, commission meeting is 23rd. Commission meeting is 23rd. Might consider coming in a little bit early for that, just during the school thing, and you have to come once. Notified.
Yeah. Right. I think I would prefer the 18th on the count of, our meetings do get long. The 19th, Thursday. Our meetings get long and this would not restrict us to an hour or whatever amount of time beforehand. Anybody can oppose that idea.
We need
That's
to
just
get, we
my-
need to get 10 days though, right? To get back.
Well, they submit the budget, you all look at it. The budget committee would either accept it or reject it by June 1st. If it's rejected, they have 10 days.
The commission
Yeah, we're
wouldn't
talking
take
about,
action.
yeah, we're talking about May 11th. About you guys talking about it on May 11th. How much time after that do they need before?
Well, you can approve it before the end of the year. Sure, that way.
It's the budget committee that did that, though.
The statute is.
That's not what you-
Better?
In the past, we have rejected it.
Well, that's what, like she was asking, that there's no point in doing it the day after your meeting on the 11th, but I'm thinking, how many days after that? Does it matter if it's 10 days after that or 7 days after that, or?
Unless you did it the night of the 10th, and their presentation that night would account for the presentation for budget, and budget would just be discussing it within the next day.
But the mayor's suggestion is that you let it go to budget first and have a little time for them to
Make it
come
Like a 6 pass.
Yeah, they're used to, the directors here, but, I mean, they're kind of used to this back and forth with the budget committee taking place fairly quickly, within a matter of a week, back and forth. And I'm not sure that didn't necessarily have to happen last year, but it has in the years before, where they've met fairly quickly and come back with something.
So if your question, I guess, was if the budget committee sent the budget back to the Board of Education.
On the 11th.
On the 11th. Yeah, technically, when do they have to return it? That's a good question, but I think that in the past, the director and the Board of Education have been pretty good about turning it around in whatever time the budget committee would ask. So if you wanted it back in, 10 days, that may be, or 5 days, that may be doable. They may have to call a special meeting to do that, but, you know, I think Director Boyd would be motivated.
Director Boyd, do you have any preference in this scenarios we've been speaking of here? You're the one going to have to present it.
Well, that's a will of the commission.
Okay. All right.
The skill set that our new director has demonstrated so far, I'm sure the first pass of budgets will be fantastic with minor adjustments. It's a process.
Mr. Chairman, I move we schedule that meeting on the 19th of May. On 18th?
18th.
Okay. Some people go to church Wednesday night.
You have a conflict that night as well. The 19th.
The 18th.
Oh, we're going to the 18th?
18th is fine with me, Mr. Chairman.
Is that the day I'm going to the, no, I'm just kidding. 18th's good with me.
At what time? Also at 5?
Yeah. 18th, 5.
Allison, I hope you're keeping up with all these days and times.
Tiffany and I both have them.
I know you
Want
would.
us to share the resolution or do anything tomorrow? We're happy to do it.
All right. All right, so we have the 18th at 5 o'clock, correct? All right. Any further discussion or questions about that?
I don't think you had a second to that, did you?
Oh, I thought, did you made that motion? We have a
I made
second?
it, okay.
Second by
We've got it now.
Commissioner Huffine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion or questions for those dates, for that date and time? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. And the motion passes. And that's May the 18th at 5 o'clock. Commissioner Wheeler, I guess scheduling any more into June might be a little too early, huh? With great hopes, you know?
The two that are required by the rule.
Yes, sir.
We probably do need to pass that as a resolution.
We do, yeah. So Allison, could you just bring that back as a resolution? Is that,
That's what it's a resolution. This is the resolution.
yeah, I mean,
So if I would say that these motions were to fill in these blanks?
Yes.
And then you want a motion for resolution 220201.
as amended.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Huffine, seconded by Commissioner Wheeler to approve the resolution 220201 as amended. Questions or discussion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, if you'll switch us to the voting screen, please. If you would, go ahead and cast your vote and lock it in. Madam Clerk, if you'll announce the vote. 14 yes. The resolution passes. All right, our next item is, we did place under old business, or I guess new business this evening. We did have the debt discussion. Was there any more questions, Commissioner Harris, about debt or comment?
It's so confusing, I don't want to get back into it. I guess we all have different opinions of what to do. I guess the good thing is we know we're building the school, and this next commission is going to have to make sure it's paid for. And I think we probably have done a good job of getting it there. It looks like we're moving the right track. I just want us to be transparent with them. These new people come in, even know the whole story. They don't know something about the whole story. The whole story is we're going to have close to $50 million in debt coming on to them. And my main concern is that's all I'm going to do.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Harris. The next item was line 530. We'll just move right on into that. And
Well, I brought that up at our last meeting, and since then, I guess we call spurs to dig into a little more, because I feel like that I was made out to be a liar on that. the mayor actually went on a local radio show and said none of these invoices were ever actually paid late. And, I've looked at them, and they have been paid late. We've cut checks for them and paid it. Like today, I sent Jeff Dykes, the CEO, or yesterday, CEO of Bright Ridge, an email and asked him about those because I'd heard from another commissioner that he was told that it was Bright Ridge's fault that we were late on electric bills. We've received 5 letters this year from Bright Ridge about accounts that were not paid. 2 of those were final notices because they've been notified before. Thankfully, Bright Ridge waived 3 of those late charges because we were good customers. The 2 of them we haven't paid, which is not a lot of money. I guess the fuel man thing is the biggest amount. Mitch is, I think reluctantly at times answered some of my questions, but I know they're working to get that money back. And I really hope they do. In fact, I spoke to Billy Shrewsbury myself, and I think he's working diligently to get some of that money back, and I hope we can. But again, I go back to transparency and honesty. They both stood here in front of us at our last meeting. Mayor and Mitch both said we hadn't paid any late fees. And Mitch, that's not true. Mayor, that's not true. And
You didn't say that.
I think
We didn't say, I didn't say that.
we can go back and listen to the mayor. Well, the mayor actually said it on the radio. If you want me to play it here, I can. I've got it on my phone. If you'd like to hear it. And, you know, all I want to do is bring it to the attention of this board. In the scheme of things, $15,000 may not seem like much. But I know a little lady that comes down and pays her property taxes and payments because she can't afford to pay that. So what's that to her? And, you know, my concern is moving forward that we straighten this out. This is not a one-time thing. I've seen Mitch on Channel 5 and on COVID, different things. You know, back in 2018, 19, the same thing was going on then. I called the comptroller's office today, and Robert Anderson is a very nice man. And he told me personally that he came in and talked to you and the mayor both back then. Well, we wrote up for it. I've got the write up here if you'd like to see it, about paying bills late then. So this is a pattern. You know, my concern is moving forward, how do we fix it? He had a good suggestion. CTAS has professionals that can come in and work with us to get something set up to stop this from happening again. I hope tonight's the last night I have to discuss it. I would just ask you to please consider talking to CTAS, working out some kind of plan to move forward and we're not paying these late fees. 39 times Comcast cable has been paid late. Fuel man. It's embarrassing when the deputy goes or somebody gets. The department received a letter in the parish from the bill. So I would just ask you to take responsibility for it. Move forward. Talk to CTAS. Get them in here and let's get a plan of action together to stop this from happening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor, if you want to respond to those.
The sheriff's deputy is not doing the fees still. The fuel man bills were paid on time, as I said. They had some issues, and we've talked to other surrounding counties about fuel man. They've had problems with them as well, so as you already know, we're investigating, getting a new source of fuel payment to buy a lot of fuel across the county, and it's important that get done correctly. Most of those fuel man charges that they placed against us have been refunded, not all, but most of them have. And we're moving forward with it. And with respect to our process to be better, we're always looking for ways to be better. I've spoken with the comptroller, not CTAS, but the comptroller is the one that has responsibility for us. And he's agreed to send an audit group in to take a look at our payables and payments and do an audit, just to be clear and transparent at where we are, and to make suggestions and recommendations on things we may be able to do better. Obviously, they audit 91 of the 95 counties. They see this all across the state, so somebody's got a better practice than we do, and we can learn from it, and I think the other people will tell us. So I don't have a schedule on when that'll take place, but it should be relatively soon before we get into the next audit cycle. They did make that commitment. So we'll look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually, today, I think of Robert Anderson, I've got his phone number. If any of you all would ever like to talk to somebody who's very knowledgeable, I'll be glad. In fact, I'll send an email tonight with his phone number and his email, because he's very, very knowledgeable. And, he said he was gonna have some people up here, I think he said at the end of this month, probably next week, to look at some of these things. Just to be honest with you all, I did send him a copy of all these late fees that you provided me, plus the ones that I've gotten from Breckenridge that's been paid. But I feel like they need to look at it. I'm glad that the mayor's open to have them come in. But that was just, you know, it really, I guess I'm just the kind of person that don't like, feel like somebody's telling a lie on me. And when I heard you on the radio, it really bothered me. And, because I knew what the facts were. I don't have, all I want to do is, like I said, hopefully we can come to a solution on this. And, get it straightened out. It's been going on for a while. 2018, 19. He plainly said, and he said he's talked to you since then. And he, I would encourage you and you all to talk to him as well.
Mitch, would you like to respond?
I will, my predecessor, Bobby Webb, who was here for, what, 30 years?
Maybe longer.
That was a constant complaint of hers, is that we were being assessed these late charges. When we discovered that in 1819, as a result of the comptroller doing their audit, okay? That's when we started the process of separately reporting, line 530. So, you know, Commissioner, I think that, you know, my office is certainly trying to be transparent. We are certainly not trying to withhold or mislead anyone. And so to imply otherwise, you know, really impugns the character of the ladies and the staff within the office, because they bust their tail in to get these things paid. So, you know, thank you very much. We recognize the problem. We are working on resolving.
I don't have a problem with ladies in the office. You're the boss. I think you do have policies. I'll be glad to share some emails I've got from you. It's very hard to get a straight answer. The yes or no answer is hard to get out of you. And, I've asked you that on several occasions.
I welcome you to come to my office anytime. An email process doesn't answer the question.
Okay, we're not going back and forth. Commissioner Carriger?
One final thing, all I'm interested in hearing is that it's solved and when it's solved.
I agree with you.
And, you know, who shot who, or who did what, I'm not interested. I just want to hear one word, we solved it on this day.
Speaking of solving that issue, Mitch, is there anything we can do for you or the mayor tonight, if there is a concern here, that we can do to help you tonight to fix that?
We're moving forward on having the invoices redirected, so they work through the pipeline quicker. No, the commission approved funding of the electronic invoice system. We're eagerly awaiting the start of that project.
Well, please let us know if there's anything that we can do, and I'm going to say this, and truly, if there's anything we can do to help you or whatever that comes up to, any kind of legislation we have, please let us know, because let's get that done. Anything else, Commissioner Harris?
I'd just like to say one thing to this budget committee. All the time there, you all put in, you deserve to be commended. You know, my health ain't the best, that's one of the reasons I'm leaving, but I put in very little. Commissioner Willer, Malone, and now Commissioner Kate, and was Commissioner Light, I guess, still there. But you guys, I mean, you go above your own. I see what you do, and I think you deserve to be commended for all the time. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Any questions or comments? Mayor, do you have any questions or comments? Mitch?
Looking forward to the budget season.
Absolutely. Commissioner Huffine?
As we went through what was my first budget last time, and I know I talked a lot about process, I want to thank Rules Committee, the mayor, Mitch, and the Budget Committee. I think we truly have a process in place, which is demonstrated by tonight, the information that we have, the upcoming meetings that we have. I think we've increased our transparency from that perspective dramatically. that will pay dividends not only for this commission, but to Mr. Harris's point, our future commission. So I just want to say a very thank you very much to everyone involved in that process. Greatly appreciated. I'm confident the citizens of our county, if they don't appreciate it now, they will in the future.
All right, anything else?
Move for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Carrier, seconded by Commissioner Lott. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign.